The great hall of Station Nexus Prime buzzed with alien voices. Kang Daeho stood alone at the center of the circular room, his black suit looking small against the massive chamber. Above him, hundreds of alien beings floated, crawled, and glowed in their seats. They all stared down at him with eyes, sensors, and energy fields that felt like cold judgment. Daeho had been Earth's ambassador for 3 years. He spoke 12 alien languages and had learned their customs. He thought he understood them. Today he realized he was wrong. "The human question must be resolved," announced Velthar, the council chairman. The crystalline being's voice rang like broken glass through the hall's translators. "They have proven themselves unfit for civilized space." A wave of agreement sounds filled the air. The Viridians made tinkling noises like wind chimes. The Nexari hummed in perfect harmony. The Luminians pulsed with satisfied light. They all agreed. Humanity had to go. Jin Hye-jin watched from the observation deck above. As Earth's military attaché, she had seen this coming. The other species feared humans, but not in the way they should. They feared human unpredictability like children feared the dark. "What are our crimes?" Daeho asked, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "We have followed every treaty. We have paid every tax. Our colonies are peaceful." Velthar's crystal body shifted, creating new angles that caught the station's lights. "Your species refuses to follow proper military doctrine. Your ships move in patterns that make no sense. Your captains make decisions based on feelings rather than logic." "Our feelings have won battles," Daeho replied. "Exactly the problem," hissed K-Rex, the Nexari speaker. The insect-like being's thousands of voices spoke as one. "War should be predictable, calculated, clean. You make it chaotic." Park Woo-jin was fixing a power relay 3 levels below the council chamber when the vote happened. The young engineer had worked on Nexus Prime for 2 years. He liked the alien technology. It was elegant and perfect. Too perfect, maybe. The aliens around him stopped working when the announcement came through the station's speakers. By unanimous vote, humanity is expelled from civilized space. All human colonies within Council territory must be evacuated within 30 standard days. His Viridian supervisor, a being that looked like a walking diamond, turned to him. "I am sorry, small. Human, you build things well, but your species is too dangerous." "Dangerous?" Wu Jin laughed, but it was a bitter sound. "We're the ones who fixed your station's gravity generators when they failed. We're the ones who figured out how to make your 3 different power systems. Work together?" "Yes," the Viridian said sadly. "That is exactly why you are dangerous. You should not have been able to do those things." In the council chamber, the laughter had started. It began with the Luminians, their energy forms flickering with amusement. The sound spread to the other species. Soon, the entire hall was filled. With alien laughter, clicks, hums, and chimes, they were laughing at Daeho's final plea. "You think we're weak because we're chaotic," he had said. "You think we're stupid because we don't follow your patterns. But chaos isn't weakness. It's adaptation. It's survival. It's growth." More laughter. "You laugh now," Daeho continued, his voice growing stronger. "But chaos built our civilization. Chaos took us to the stars. Chaos will keep us alive when your perfect systems fail." "Enough," Velthar's voice cut through the noise. "Your threats do not concern us. The outer rim awaits you. Perhaps the void will teach your species humility." The outer rim. Everyone knew what that meant. The dangerous edge of the galaxy, where space itself went wrong, where ships disappeared and stars died young. The aliens were sending humanity to die, but they were too polite to say it directly. Choi Yu-na was in her laboratory when security came for her. The young scientist had been studying council technology for months, trying to understand how it worked. The guards were gentle but firm. "You have 24 hours to pack your personal items," the lead guard said. He was Nexari, speaking with the collective voice of millions. "All research materials belong to the council." Yu-na looked at her work. Months of careful study, all about to be taken away. "Can I at least finish my current experiment?" "No." "Council. Property cannot be contaminated by human unpredictability." She almost laughed. Contaminated. As if thinking differently was a disease. The evacuation began immediately. Human colonies throughout council space received the same message. Pack what? You can carry. Leave everything else. Go to the rim and never come back. On the observation deck, Jin Hye-jin watched Dae-ho walk out of the council chamber. His shoulders were straight, but she could see the defeat in his step. She met him at the door. They made their choice. She said quietly. "So did we a long time ago," Dae-ho replied. "We chose to be human. We chose to be different. We chose to be chaotic. And now we choose to survive." Below them, the great hall was emptying. The alien counselors floated, crawled, and glowed their way back to their ships. They had cleaned house. They had removed the chaotic element from their perfect civilization. They had no idea what they had just unleashed. The evacuation ships were already gathering at the station's docks. Human families carried their belongings in simple bags and boxes. Children cried. Adults tried to stay strong. But there was something else in their eyes, something the aliens had missed. Humanity had been exiled before, on their own world. They had survived ice ages and plagues and wars. They had been scattered and beaten and broken, but they had always come back stronger. The council thought they were sending humanity to die in the void. They thought the outer rim would finish what they had started. They were wrong. In the depths of space, something stirred. Ancient things that had watched the galaxy turn for millions of years. They had seen species rise and fall. They had watched civilizations grow perfect and pure and die. Now something new was coming to their realm. Something chaotic and unpredictable and alive. They smiled, if beings made of dark energy could smile. The galaxy was about to become a much more interesting place. The transport ship Resilience shuddered as another blast hit its shields. Captain Song Ji-woo gripped his chair and watched the council patrol craft on his screen. They were supposed to be escorting the human convoy to the border. Instead, they kept firing warning shots that came dangerously close to hitting. "Accidental weapons discharge," came the cold voice over the radio. "Please maintain proper formation." Ji-woo had been flying ships for 15 years. He knew the difference between an accident and a threat. These weren't accidents. "How many more ships in the convoy?" he asked his first officer. 47 still with us, Captain. We lost contact with the New Hope an hour ago." Ji-woo closed his eyes for a moment. The New Hope had been carrying 300 families from the mining colony at Kepler 442. If the Council had destroyed it, they would never admit it. Another unfortunate accident during the evacuation. In the passenger compartments below, Kim Soo-young held her 2 children close. 8-year-old Min Jun kept asking why they had to leave their home. 6-year-old Hana just cried quietly against her mother's shoulder. "Are we going to die, Mom?" Minjun whispered. Soo-young looked out the small porthole at the stars. "No, baby. We're going to find a new home. Humans are good at that." She hoped she was telling the truth. 3 ships ahead, Lee Minho was trying to save what he could of his colony's history. The governor of New Terra had spent 5 years building something beautiful. The first human city designed from the ground up for alien architecture. Gardens that bloomed in alien soil. Art galleries that showed what humans could create when they had peace. All of it was gone now. The council had seized the colony for security reasons the moment the evacuation order came through. 50,000 people had 48 hours to pack their lives into cargo containers, sir, his aide said quietly. The council is demanding we leave behind the cultural archive. Minho looked at the data crystals that held 5 years of human achievement. Poems written under an alien sun. Music composed for non-human ears. The first generation of children born on New Terra, speaking human languages mixed with alien words. "No," he said. "Load it anyway. They can try to stop us." The convoy was getting smaller, not just from attacks, but from breakdowns. Human ships had been designed to work with Council technology. Now that they were cut off from Council support, things were failing. Major Nam Tae-hyun watched his troop transport limp along on half-power. The military evacuation was supposed to be smooth and organized. Instead, it was chaos, just like everything humans did, according to the Council. "Sir, we're getting reports from the outer colonies," his communications officer said. "Some of them are refusing to evacuate." "What do you mean, refusing?" "Colony ship Frontier says they'd rather fight than run. The mining station at Ross 458 has gone completely silent. And the agricultural colony at Wolf 359 is asking for military support." Nam Tae-hyun had his orders. Full evacuation. No exceptions. But he also knew his people. Humans didn't run when cornered. They fought. "Send a message to Fleet Command," he said. "Request permission to provide defensive support to colonies that choose to resist." "Sir, that's directly against evacuation orders. I know." Nam Tae-hyun smiled grimly. "Put it in the log as tactical flexibility. Maybe the brass will understand." The journey to the Outer Rim took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of constant fear, broken ships, and dwindling supplies. The Council escorts made sure the convoy stayed on course, always ready to fire if any human ship tried to turn back. But something strange happened during those 3 weeks. The humans started working together in ways they never had before. When the transport Genesis lost life support, 5 other ships shared their air recycling capacity. When pirates attacked near the border, cargo haulers turned into improvised warships. Captain Jiwoo watched it happen from the bridge of the Resilience. "You know what, Lieutenant?" he said to his first officer. "Maybe the Council did us a favor." "Sir, look at us. 3 weeks ago, we were separate colonies scattered across their space. Now we're a fleet. We're working as one people. One people heading into the most dangerous part of the galaxy." "Yeah," Jiwoo grinned. "Should be fun." The void reaches looked exactly like their name suggested. Empty space filled with dangerous anomalies, gravity wells that appeared from nowhere, energy storms that could fry a ship's electronics, regions where space itself seemed twisted into impossible shapes. The first human survey ships had mapped some of it years ago, but they had barely scratched the surface. Now, 47 ships carrying over 2 million humans were flying straight into the unknown. "Captain," the navigator called out, "I'm reading something strange ahead." On the main screen, a massive structure appeared. It looked like a space station, but it was wrong somehow. The geometry hurt to look at, with angles that seemed to fold in on themselves. "Any signs of life?" Jiwoo asked. "Negative, sir. But there's something else. The structure is singing." They all heard it then. A low, harmonic sound that came through the ship's hull, not through the radio. It was hauntingly beautiful and completely alien. "Should we investigate?" the first officer asked. "No," Jiwoo decided. "We'll mark it and move on. We need to find a safe place to set up our first colony." But as they flew past the strange station, Jiwoo couldn't shake the feeling that it was watching them, waiting for something. The convoy found its first temporary home around a red dwarf star. 3 rocky planets, one with water and breathable atmosphere. It wasn't paradise, but it was theirs. The landing was organized chaos. 2 million people trying to build a civilization from scratch. There weren't enough supplies, not enough shelter, not enough of anything except determination. Kim Soo-young and her children were assigned to Shelter Group 7, a collection of prefab buildings that would house 50 families. It was crowded and loud and nothing like their old home. "I don't like it here," Hana said, clinging to her mother's hand. "I know, baby," Soo-young replied. "But look." She pointed to where other children were already playing in the red dirt. "You'll make new friends, and we'll build something better." Governor Lee Min-ho set up the temporary government in a cargo container. It wasn't dignified, but it worked. His first official act was to name their new world. "I hereby declare this planet to be called Haven," he announced over the settlement's comm system. "Because that's what it is, our safe harbor in the storm." The name stuck. Major Nam Tae-hyun established the colony's defenses with a mix of military precision and human improvisation. Guard towers made from shipping containers. Sensor arrays built from spare ship parts. A militia that trained during the day and built homes at night. "Sir," one of his sergeants asked, "what exactly are we defending against?" Nam Tae-hyun looked out at the red-tinged horizon. Strange lights had been seen moving in the distance. The radio occasionally picked up signals that weren't human and weren't council. "Everything," he said simply. Captain Jiwoo kept the Resilience in orbit, part of the small fleet that would protect the colony and explore the surrounding space. On quiet nights, he would listen to transmissions from Council space. The news was always the same. How clean and peaceful things were now. How the chaos had been removed. How perfect their civilization had become. "They have no idea what they've lost," his first officer said one night. "No," Jiwoo agreed, "but they will." In the depths of space, ancient things continued to watch. The humans had survived their first test. They had reached the outer rim and begun to build. Now the real test would begin. The void had been waiting for something like humanity for a very long time. Something that could adapt. Something that could grow. Something that could change without breaking. The dance was about to begin. 20 years had passed since the Exodus, and Admiral Yoon Sang-wook barely remembered the frightened transport pilot he used to be. He stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching 3 human battleships patrol the edge of the Whirlpool Nebula. Ships that shouldn't exist, built with technology that shouldn't work. "Admiral," his communications officer called, "we're getting another request from the Shadows for a trade meeting." Sang-wook smiled. The Shadows. When humans first encountered them 10 years ago, everyone thought they were monsters. Dark energy. Beings that lived in the spaces between dimensions. The Council had always feared them, called them demons. Humans called them neighbors. Set up the meeting for tomorrow, Sang-Wook ordered. Standard protocols, and make sure we bring some of those new quantum processors. They love our chaotic computing. Down on Haven's surface, Dr. Han Bo-Ra was studying something that would have terrified council scientists. A living crystal that grew in impossible patterns, changing its structure based on what it was thinking about. She had found it in the singing caves, where reality got thin and strange things happened. "It's beautiful," she whispered to her assistant. The crystal pulsed with soft light responding to her emotions. "It's also completely impossible," her assistant replied. "Crystals don't think. They don't change. They don't sing." "Maybe council crystals don't," Bo-Ra said. "But this isn't council space anymore." The void reaches had changed humanity, but humanity had changed the void reaches too. Where humans settled, the strange anomalies became less dangerous and more useful. Gravity wells turned into power sources. Energy storms became communication networks. Space that used to kill now helped humans travel faster than light in ways the Council never imagined. Colonel O.J. Mean led a patrol of Void Rangers through the Twisted Sector, where space folded in on itself like origami. His team moved through dimensions that didn't have names, tracking signals that came from everywhere and nowhere. "Contact ahead," his scout reported. "Unknown vessel, but it's broadcasting human signals." They found a ship that looked like it, had been built from liquid metal and crystallized music. Its hull sang with harmonics that made the Rangers' equipment dance. But the crew was human, even if they looked different after 20 years in the deep void. "We're from the far colony," the captain explained when they met face to face. "Been out here for 15 years, trading with the Deep Builders." Deep Builders? Jamin had never heard the term. Ancient species, older than the Council. They build realities instead of ships. Been waiting for someone like us to show up. "Someone like us?" The captain smiled, and his eyes reflected light that wasn't quite normal. "Someone chaotic enough to understand their art." Back in the inner colonies, engineer Lim Si-Jin was working on humanity's greatest achievement, the Reality Anchor Drive. It let ships travel through the unstable regions of space by adapting to whatever reality they found. "The trick is not fighting the chaos," she explained to her team. "It's dancing with it." The drive worked by accepting that space could be different, in different places. Instead of forcing a single set of physical laws, it let the ship become whatever it needed to be. Matter, energy, information, dream, whatever worked best for where they were going. Council ships couldn't do that. Their technology demanded that reality follow rules. Human ships asked reality what rules it wanted to follow, then played along. "Test run in 5 minutes," Se-Jin announced. "Let's see if we can make it to the spiral arm in one piece." The ship Paradox flickered out of normal space and began dancing through dimensions that Council science said didn't exist. It arrived at its destination in 3 hours instead of 3 months. On the political front, President Shin Dong-wook was managing something that shouldn't have been possible, a government that worked despite having no central authority. The Rim Alliance was a collection of colonies, ship fleets, and mobile cities that somehow coordinated without anyone being in charge. "How do we make decisions?" he often asked, visiting aliens. "We argue until we find something everyone can live with. Then we change it when it stops working." The aliens always looked confused. How could a government function without rigid structure? How could people cooperate without being told what to do? Because, Dong-wook would explain, chaos isn't the opposite of order. It's the source of new order. The Rim Alliance now included over 100 human settlements scattered across the galaxy's edge. Some were traditional colonies on planets. Others were space habitats that moved between dimensions. A few existed only as information patterns, in the quantum foam, populated by humans who had evolved beyond physical form. All of them were still recognizably human. Ambassador Ryu Hua-young was meeting with a new species humanity had discovered, the spiral dancers. They were energy beings who lived in the rotation of galaxies, experiencing time as music and space as rhythm. "Your species is fascinating," the lead dancer said, its voice like distant thunder. "You change without losing yourselves. You adapt without surrendering your nature." "That's what humans do," Hua-young replied. "We become what we need to be." "Yes. This is why the Deep Builders wish to meet you. This is why the Shadows trade with you. This is why even the old Council fears you." "The Council fears us?" "Oh, yes. They receive reports about your expansion, your new technologies, your alliances, with species they did not know existed. They begin to understand their mistake." The reports were true. Humanity had not just survived in the void reaches. They had thrived beyond all expectations. What started as 2 million refugees had become 20 billion humans scattered across dozens of systems. They had built cities that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. They had tamed energy storms and made friends with living black holes. Most importantly, they had learned to work with the chaos instead of against it. Dr. Bora's latest discovery was proof of that. She had found a way to grow ships instead of building them. Seeds of possibility planted in quantum soil, watered with human dreams, growing into vessels that were part machine and part living art. "The Council will never understand this," she told her team as they watched a new ship take its first breath. "They think everything has to be planned, designed, controlled." "And if they saw this?" her assistant asked. "They'd call it impossible and try to destroy it." But the Council was far away, and their perfect civilization was beginning to show cracks. Trade had become predictable to the point of stagnation. Art was beautiful but never surprising. Science advanced in careful, measured steps that never led anywhere truly new. They had achieved the order they wanted. They had removed the chaotic element that bothered them, and slowly, quietly, they were dying. Meanwhile, at the edge of the galaxy, humanity danced with impossible things and called them friends. They built civilizations that changed like living organisms. They explored dimensions that didn't exist and made them real through sheer stubborn curiosity. Admiral Sang-wook received a priority transmission that made him smile. It was from deep space, from explorers who had gone farther than any human before them. "Admiral," the message said, "you're not going to believe what we found out here. There's an entire galaxy of species that the Council never contacted. They've been waiting for someone like us to show up and introduce them to the local neighborhood." "How many species?" Sang-wook asked in his reply. "Thousands, maybe millions. And, sir, they all have one thing in common." "What's that?" "They're all just as chaotic as we are. Turns out the Council only talked to the boring species. There's a whole universe of interesting people out here." Sang-wook laughed, a sound that would have horrified the crystal-pure Viridians. Chaos calling to chaos across the void. Impossibility. Reaching out to embrace more impossibility. The Council had wanted to clean house. They had gotten rid of the messy, unpredictable humans. They had no idea what they had unleashed into the wild spaces beyond their perfect civilization. In the depths of space, ancient things that had watched galaxies being born felt something they hadn't experienced in millions of years. Hope. The universe was about to become a much more interesting place. The first signs of trouble came as whispers in Council space. Ships disappearing near the galactic core, colonies going silent without explanation, strange readings from deep space sensors that made no sense according to any known physics. Velthar, the council chairman, studied the reports with growing unease. His crystalline form reflected the emergency lights of the council chamber as representatives from across civilized space gathered for an unprecedented emergency session. The attacks began 3 months ago, reported Carex, the Nexari Collective. Consciousness. Unknown vessels emerging from dark space. They use weapons that change their function mid-battle. Our defensive algorithms cannot adapt fast enough. How many ships have we lost? Asked Lumarine, speaking for the Luminians. Over 300 warships, Velthar admitted. But it's not just the numbers. It's how they're destroyed. The enemy seems to learn from each encounter, changing their tactics in ways our computers can't predict. In the human colonies at the galaxy's edge, President Shin Dong-wook was getting his own reports. Strange signals from beyond the deep dark, ships that moved like liquid darkness, attacks that defied every rule of warfare. They're not like anything we've encountered, reported Colonel O. Jamin via quantum transmission. His Void Rangers had been monitoring the disturbances for weeks. They fight like, well, like us, but angrier. What do you mean? They use chaos as a weapon, sir, but it's chaos without purpose, destruction without creation, like someone took everything that makes us adaptable and removed everything that makes us human. Dr. Han Bo-Ra had been studying the enemy signals with her impossible crystal computers. What she found made her blood run cold. They're human, she told the emergency council meeting on Haven. Or they were human once. The quantum signatures are unmistakable, but they're from somewhere else. Someone else. Parallel dimension, asked Admiral Sang-wook. Has to be. A timeline where humanity developed differently, where we embraced pure chaos without balance, without compassion. The enemy called themselves the Void-born. They came from a reality where humanity had been cast out into the dark between dimensions and had gone insane from isolation, where chaos had become cruelty and adaptation had become destruction. Captain Moon Jun-ho encountered them first during a routine patrol near the Singing Nebula. His ship, the Experimental Paradox, was humanity's most advanced vessel, part matter, part energy, part living dream. The void-born ship that attacked him was its dark reflection. Where the paradox danced through dimensions with joy, the enemy vessel tore through reality with hatred. They're trying to communicate, his communications officer reported. The message came through in broken human languages mixed with sounds that hurt to hear. Weak, still serving the Council's order. We will show you strength. We will show you freedom. They think we're still under Council control, Jun-ho realized. They don't know we were exiled, too. The battle that followed was unlike anything in human military history. 2 impossible ships fighting with weapons that rewrote the laws of physics. The paradox adapted and flowed. The void-born ship attacked and consumed. Jun-ho won by doing something the enemy couldn't predict. He surrendered. We're not your enemy, he broadcast as his ship powered down its weapons. We were cast out too. We understand your pain. For a moment, the attack stopped. Then the enemy ship screamed, actually screamed across space, and vanished back into the dark dimensions. The reports from that encounter reached Council space within hours. The crystalline Viridians calculated the implications with perfect logic. The Nexari collective mind analyzed the threat with millions of perspectives. The Luminians processed the data with energy-based computation systems. All of them reached the same conclusion. They were doomed. Our fleets cannot adapt fast. Enough, Velthar announced to the emergency session. Our tactics are too rigid. Our technology assumes that physics follows rules. What are you saying? Demanded the Altarian representative. I am saying that we need help from the only species that might understand this enemy. The silence that followed was deafening. No, said Carex finally. We will not ask them. We cannot show such weakness. Then we will die with our pride intact, Velthar replied coldly. But as more colonies fell and more fleets were destroyed, pride became a luxury the Council could no longer afford. The Void-born spread through civilized space like a plague, turning order into chaos, certainty into nightmare. The message that finally went out to the Rim Alliance was simple. Help us. President Dong-wook called an emergency session of the Alliance Council. Representatives from dozens of human colonies, ship cities, and dimensional outposts gathered in virtual space to debate the impossible. They exiled us, said the governor of Far Colony. They laughed at us. They tried to kill us during the evacuation. Why should we help them? Because that's what humans do, replied Admiral Sang-wook. We help people who need it, even if they don't deserve it. The vote was closer than anyone expected. Barely 51% in favor of providing aid, but it was enough. General Baek Soo-jin took command of the Combined Human Response Fleet, 200 ships that defied every rule of military engineering, vessels that could exist in multiple dimensions, fight with weapons made of living music, and adapt to any situation by becoming something new. Our mission is simple, she told her captains. We're going to save the people who tried to destroy us, and we're going to do it with style. The first joint Human Council operation took place in the Helix sector, where a Void-born fleet was systematically destroying Viridian crystal cities. Human ships arrived through dimensional portals, while Council forces engaged from normal space. The battle was chaos, but chaos with purpose. Human captains made split-second decisions based on intuition, while Council computers provided perfect tactical analysis. Human ships flowed like water, while Council vessels held the line like stone. For the first time in the war, the Void-born were confused. They had learned to counter rigid Council tactics and human adaptability separately. But together, the combination created something entirely new. They can't predict us when we work together, Captain Junho reported. Order and chaos supporting each other instead of fighting. The victory in the Helix sector was just the beginning. Human Council joint forces began pushing back the Void-born invasion, system by system. But the cost was enormous. Entire worlds were evacuated. Fleets that had taken centuries to build were destroyed in hours. The perfect crystal cities of the Viridians cracked under weapons that turned order into entropy. The final battle came at the Nexus itself, the galactic core where civilization had first begun. The Void-born had gathered their entire fleet for one massive assault on the Council's heart. They want to destroy the concept of order itself, Dr. Bo-Ra explained to the combined command staff. Not just defeat it, erase it from reality. The defense of the Nexus involved every human ship and every Council vessel that could still fly. Military craft and civilian transports, ancient dreadnoughts and experimental prototypes, all united against an enemy that represented humanity's darkest possible future. Admiral Sangwook commanded the human forces from the bridge of his flagship. Around him, holographic displays showed impossible formations as human ships danced between dimensions while Council vessels held steady firing lines. All ships, he broadcast to the combined fleet, remember what we're fighting for. Not just survival. Not just victory. We're fighting for the right to be different, the right to grow, the right to become more than we were. The battle raged across 17 dimensions and lasted for 3 days. Reality itself became a weapon as both sides pushed the universe beyond its limits. In the end, victory came not from superior firepower, but from understanding. Captain Moon Jun-ho led a small squadron deep into the Void-born formation. Instead of fighting, they broadcast a message on all frequencies. We know what you've suffered. We know what it's like to be cast out, to be alone in the dark. But this isn't the way. Join us. Help us build something better. Some of the Void-born stopped fighting. Not many, but enough. Enough to create doubt in their ranks. Enough to break their perfect unity. The invasion collapsed not with explosions, but with defections. Void-born ships surrendering to former enemies. Dark humans seeing light for the first time in eons. The war was over. But the real work was just beginning. In the aftermath, as refugees were settled and fleets rebuilt, the Council made an unprecedented offer: full membership for humanity, complete integration into civilized space, a chance to return home. President Dongwook's answer surprised everyone. "Thank you," he said simply. But no. No, Velthar's crystal form rang with confusion. "We've outgrown you," Dongwook explained. 20 years ago, you cast us out because we were too chaotic for your perfect civilization. Now you've learned that chaos has its place. But we've learned something too. What? That we don't need your approval to be who we are. Fleet Admiral Park Kyung-soo stood in the memorial garden on Haven, reading names carved into living crystal. Each name glowed softly, representing a human life lost in the battle of the Nexus. The crystal had been a gift from the Viridians, their way of honoring the dead. 3,412, he said quietly to Dr. An Mi-young, who stood beside him. That's how many we lost saving them. And how many of them did we save? Mi-young asked. Billions, maybe trillions. He touched one of the names. A young pilot who had given her life to protect a Council refugee ship. Was it worth it? Ask me in 50 years, Mi-young replied. When we see what grows from all this. Across the galaxy, that question was being answered in ways no one expected. The war had changed everything, not just politically or militarily, but in the very fabric of how species related to each other. Elder statesman Go Hyun-woo was meeting with Council representatives on the neutral station New Harmony. The negotiations had been going on for months, trying to figure out what came next. Your technology saved our civilization, admitted Velthar, the former Council chairman. His crystal form looked different now, less perfect, more organic. The war had changed the Viridians, too. We owe you a debt that can never be repaid. You don't owe us anything, Go Hyun-woo replied. That's not why we helped. Then why? because it was the right thing to do. Velthar's form flickered with confusion. The concept of acting without expectation of reward was still foreign to many council species. They had spent so long calculating cost and benefit that they had forgotten about simple compassion. "We want to offer you full membership in the council," Velthar continued. "Equal representation, equal voice in all decisions, full access to all our technology and territory." Go Hyun-woo was quiet for a long moment. 25 years ago, you cast us out because we didn't fit your vision of civilization. Now you want us back because we saved you from your own mistakes. Yes. The answer is no. The refusal sent shockwaves through council space. How could humanity reject such an honor? How could they turn down everything they had supposedly wanted? President Shin Dong-wook explained it in a broadcast that reached every inhabited world in the galaxy. "We appreciate the offer. We truly do. But we've learned something important during our time in the void reaches. We don't need anyone's permission to exist. We don't need anyone's approval to be human." The real reason was more complex. Humanity had evolved beyond what the Council could offer. They had built something new in the deep spaces, a civilization that embraced change instead of fearing it. Memorial Keeper Lee So-ra was documenting what they had learned. Her archive contained the stories of every human who had lived through the exile, the adaptation, the war, stories of loss and growth and transformation. "The Council thinks in terms of membership and exclusion," she wrote in her final report. "Us and them, civilized and chaotic. But humanity has learned to think differently. We don't divide the galaxy into friends and enemies. We divide it into family and family we haven't met yet." The practical results of that philosophy were already showing. Human colonies were opening their doors to refugees from the war. Not just council species, but void-born survivors who wanted to find a new way to live. Dr. Han Bo-ra was working with a team of reformed void-born on New Terra, helping them learn to use chaos constructively instead of destructively. It wasn't easy. They had spent centuries seeing destruction as the only form of freedom. "Watch," she said, showing them how to grow a crystal computer using pure thought. "Chaos doesn't have to tear things down. It can build them up in new ways." One of the Void-born, a former human named Darkstar Falling, watched the crystal take shape with wonder in her ancient eyes. "We forgot," she whispered. "In all our anger, we forgot that creation was possible. Now you remember." Bo-ra smiled. "That's all that matters. The integration wasn't perfect. Some void-born couldn't adjust to peaceful existence. Some council species still feared human unpredictability. Some humans wanted revenge for the exile. But slowly, carefully, new bridges were being built. Captain Moon Jun-ho commanded the first. Mixed crew in galactic history. Humans working alongside Viridians, Nexari, Luminians, and reformed Void-born. His ship, the New Harmony, was a living symbol of what cooperation could achieve. "It's not about becoming the same," he explained to a young crew member, a Nexari drone who had chosen individual consciousness over collective thought. "It's about learning to be different together." The Council territories were changing too. The rigid perfection that had defined their civilization for millennia was giving way to something more flexible, more human. Viridian crystal cities now grew in organic patterns instead of geometric precision. Nexari collectives allowed for individual dissent and creativity. Luminian energy forms experimented with emotions they had never experienced before. You have contaminated us, Velthar said during one of his visits to human space. But he said it with something that might have been gratitude. Contaminated? Go Hyun-woo raised an eyebrow. Made us less perfect, less pure, less certain of our righteousness. The crystal being's form shifted to show colors that hadn't existed in Viridian art before the war. We find that we enjoy it. The younger generation of council species was especially receptive to human ideas. Young Viridians who grew their crystals in chaotic patterns. Nexari drones who chose to think for themselves. Luminians who decided to experience physical form. They were becoming more human, in the best sense of the word. But humanity was changing too. Contact with council logic had taught them the value of planning and structure. Alliance with ancient species like the Shadows had given them wisdom beyond their years. Admiral Yoon Sang-wook commanded the new Rim Defense Fleet, a joint force of human, council, and allied alien ships that protected the galaxy's edge from threats both known and unknown. We're not the same species that was exiled 25 years ago, he told his mixed command staff. We're something new, something that couldn't have existed without everything we've been through. The memorial ceremonies were held simultaneously on thousands of worlds. Not just for the war dead, but for what had been lost and what had been gained. On the Council homeworld, Nexus Prime, they mourned the loss of their perfect certainty. Their civilization had been pure and orderly and beautiful. It had also been sterile and stagnant and slowly dying. We mourn what we lost, Velthar said at the ceremony. But we celebrate what we found. In human space, the mourning was more complex. They remembered the pain of exile, the fear of the unknown, the cost of survival. But they also remembered the joy of discovery, the thrill of adaptation, the satisfaction of helping others. We were forced away from our first home, President Dong-wook said at the Haven Memorial. But we found something better. We found ourselves. The final ceremony was held in deep space, at the site where the first human ships had been fired upon during the Exodus. A monument was built there, not to commemorate victory or defeat, but to mark the moment when everything changed. Species from across the galaxy attended, former enemies working together to build something that honored both loss and growth. The inscription was simple, written in every language of every species present. Here, fear met hope. Here, order met chaos. Here, separation became connection. Here the galaxy learned that different does not mean enemy. As the ceremony ended, representatives began to drift back to their ships, their worlds, their responsibilities. But something had changed in the way they moved, the way they interacted. The rigid formations of the old council had given way to organic patterns that flowed and adapted. The chaotic swirl of human activity had gained structure and purpose. Something new was emerging from the mixture. Lee Sora, now elderly but still sharp, watched the ships depart from the observation deck of her archive station. Beside her, a young Viridian apprentice, one of the first of her species to choose storytelling over mathematics, was recording the moment. "What happens now?" the young crystal being asked. "Now we build something that's never existed before," Sora replied. "A galaxy where being different is a strength instead of a weakness, where chaos and order dance together instead of fighting, where everyone has a place, even if that place doesn't exist yet." "Do you think it will work?" Lee Sora smiled, thinking of all the impossible things she had seen humans accomplish. Ask me in 100 years, when we see what the children of all our species create together. In the deep spaces beyond the galactic rim, ancient beings that had watched the rise and fall of countless civilizations felt something they had never experienced before. Pride. The universe was becoming exactly what it was meant to be. Infinite, chaotic, beautiful, and full of endless possibility. The Council had forced humanity away, thinking they were cleaning house. Instead, they had planted seeds of change that would grow into something magnificent. They mourned what they had lost when they cast out the humans, but what they had gained, what they were all becoming together, was worth every tear.